Doctor pressed all four of his appendages against the observation glass and watched the creature below with growing horror. The human female had been running for 6 standard hours across the artificial savanna environment. 6 hours, without stopping, without collapsing, without dying. "This is impossible," whispered senior researcher, her scales shifting to pale blue with distress. "No carbon-based organism can sustain this level of exertion. The heat generation alone should have killed her by now." The Galactic Scientific Council had assembled the minds from 17 species to study the Terrans. For 300 cycles, the galaxy had watched humans spread across star systems like wildfire. They conquered planets that other species considered death worlds. They survived in environments that killed everything else. They became apex predators on every world they touched. Nobody understood how. Doctor had dedicated 40 cycles of his life to solving this mystery. He had studied Terran biology, their strange bipedal locomotion, their inefficient respiratory systems. On paper, humans were unremarkable. They were not the strongest species, not the fastest, not the most intelligent. Their senses were average at best. Their natural weapons were pathetic compared to claws or fangs. Yet somehow, humans had become the most feared hunters in the known universe. "Increase the environmental temperature by 15 degrees, ordered. "Let us see how she responds to heat stress." The technicians obeyed. The artificial sun burned hotter. The grasslands shimmered with waves of heat that would have incapacitated any within minutes. The human kept running. Noticed something strange happening to her skin. Liquid was seeping from tiny pores across her entire body. The human was wet, glistening under the harsh light like she had emerged from water. "What is that substance?" demanded, zooming her scanner onto the human's skin. "Is she bleeding?" "Negative. It appears to be primarily water with dissolved salts," consulted his with trembling appendages. "The Terrans call it sweat. It is a cooling mechanism." "A cooling mechanism that covers the entire body." His voice rose with disbelief. "That is incredibly wasteful. The water loss alone would kill most species within hours." But the human did not die. She drank from her canteen periodically, replacing the lost fluids, and her body temperature remained stable. Her strange cooling system was keeping her alive in conditions that would have cooked from the inside out. "Begin recording observations," said quietly. "I believe we are witnessing something unprecedented." The study had begun 3 months ago when the Council received disturbing reports from the frontier colonies. A group of poachers had been hunting the protected wildlife on Nu, a human-colonized world. They were the galaxy's premier predators, 8-limbed killing machines with reflexes that operated faster than most species could think. The humans had hunted them down. Not with superior weapons, not with traps or ambushes. The colonists had simply followed them across the wilderness. Day after day, night after night, they would run, putting vast distances between themselves and their pursuers. They would find shelter, rest, recover their strength. And when they woke, the humans were there, always there, getting closer. The poachers had died from exhaustion and terror. Their hearts had given out before the humans ever laid hands on them. Similar reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Human bounty hunters who never stopped tracking their targets. Human soldiers who marched through conditions that killed their enemies. Human explorers who crossed death worlds on foot while other species died in their climate-controlled vehicles. The Council needed answers. Doctor had proposed this study facility, a controlled environment where Terran capabilities could be measured and analyzed. The human volunteer, a female named Sarah, had agreed to participate in exchange for research data on alien physiology. She seemed amused by the whole arrangement. That amusement had begun to terrify. 8 hours, announced the monitoring technician, a young with wide, unblinking eyes. She has been running for 8 standard hours. Her heart rate has stabilized at 140 beats per minute, body temperature holding at 38 degrees. She shows no signs of stopping. Pulled up the physiological data on his display. The numbers made no sense. Sarah's body was a contradiction, a biological impossibility that challenged everything he knew about carbon-based life. Her legs were designed for efficiency over speed. Long tendons stored and released energy with each stride, reducing the metabolic cost of movement. Her respiratory system could deliver oxygen to her muscles far more effectively during sustained activity than any sprinter species. Her strange, hairless skin radiated heat into the environment, preventing the internal temperature spikes that killed faster runners. She was not built to catch prey, she was built to outlast it. I need to speak with her, decided. Pause the physical trial and bring her to the interview chamber. Sarah entered the chamber 20 minutes later, still covered in sweat but breathing normally. She had already consumed 2 liters of water and appeared ready for more activity. Struggled to hide his revulsion at the moisture dripping from her skin. "How do you feel?" he asked through the translator. "Pretty good," Sarah replied with a casual shrug. "That was a nice warm-up. My grandfather used to run ultramarathons back on Earth. 100-mile races through mountains and deserts. Took him about 20 hours usually." Slipped from his appendages and clattered on the floor. 20 hours of continuous running, clarified, her scales now pure white with shock. "Your species does this for recreation." "Some of us do, yeah. Humans have been persistent hunters for millions of years. It's how our ancestors survived on the African savanna." Sarah accepted a fresh water container from a nervous technician. "We couldn't outrun the prey animals, but we could keep following them until they collapsed from heat exhaustion. Nothing else on Earth could regulate body temperature while running like we could." Retrieved his with shaking appendages. "You hunted by refusing to stop." "Exactly. Doesn't matter how fast the prey is if it has to stop eventually and you don't." Sarah smiled and saw something ancient and predatory behind her friendly expression. "Our ancestors would chase antelope across the savanna for hours. The animal would sprint away, rest, sprint away again. But the humans never stopped. They just kept coming at that same steady pace. Eventually, the antelope would overheat and collapse. Easy meal." The implications crashed over like a wave of cold water. Every species in the galaxy had evolved to hunt through speed, ambush, or superior senses. The struck fast and the used camouflage and surprise. The hunted in coordinated packs, overwhelming prey through numbers. But humans hunted through inevitability. "The psychological impact," murmured, his mind racing. "The prey species on your world must have evolved to fear sustained pursuit more than any other threat." "Oh, definitely. Humans are scary on a primitive level that most Earth animals can't even articulate. We're the monster that never stops following." Sarah leaned back in her chair. "I think that's why the poachers died the way they did. They weren't just physically exhausted. They were experiencing the kind of terror that evolution programmed into prey animals millions of years ago." Made a sound of distress. "You're saying that humans trigger an ancestral fear response in other species, that your persistence hunting created a psychological weapon." "We don't think of it that way, but yeah, basically. The nightmare of something that keeps coming no matter what you do is pretty universal." Sarah shrugged again. "On Earth, we have stories about relentless pursuers, zombies, terminators, vengeful spirits. They tap into that deep fear of being hunted by something you can't escape." Stared at the human with new eyes. He had studied her species for 40 cycles, cataloging their physiology, their technology, their social structures. He had never understood what made them so dangerous. Now he knew. Humans were not apex predators because they were faster or stronger or smarter than their competitors. They were apex predators because they were patient, because they could maintain pursuit long after other species had exhausted themselves, because they could cross any terrain, survive any climate, endure any hardship that the universe threw at them. They were the monsters that never stopped coming. "I must present these findings to the Council," said quietly. "The implications for galactic security are significant." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Are we being classified as a threat?" "No," met her gaze with his central eye. "You are being classified as an inevitability. I suspect the Council will recommend that no species ever give humans a reason to pursue them." Sarah laughed, and the sound echoed through the chamber. "Smart policy. My grandmother always said that humans don't know how to quit. We just keep going until we get what we want or die trying." Believed her. The thought kept him awake for many nights afterward. The report he submitted to the Galactic Scientific Council changed interstellar politics forever. Species that had considered humans weak and primitive suddenly understood the danger they faced. The slow species, the patient hunters, the creatures that never stopped pursuing their goals had spread across the galaxy, while everyone else was still trying to figure out how. Humans did not conquer through superior firepower or advanced technology. They conquered through endurance, through stubbornness, through the simple, terrifying ability to keep moving forward when everything else in the universe had stopped. Doctor retired from active research the following cycle. He had spent 40 years trying to understand what made humans dangerous. The answer was so simple that it haunted him. They just never stopped. And the universe, ancient and vast and filled with wonders beyond counting, had finally learned to fear the patient predator that walked upright on two legs and sweated away the heat of 1,000 worlds. The human era had begun, and it would continue until the stars themselves burned out, because that was what humans did. They endured. They persisted. They outlasted everything that stood in their way. Word of the study spread through diplomatic channels and scientific networks. Other researchers confirmed findings on dozens of colony worlds. Human settlers regularly outperformed species that should have dominated them in every measurable way. They crossed deserts that killed expeditions. They survived Arctic conditions that froze hunting parties solid. They climbed mountains that the declared impossible. Nothing stopped them. Nothing even slowed them down for long. The Galactic Trade Federation revised its shipping routes to accommodate human cargo handlers, who could work longer shifts than any other species. Military strategists rewrote their combat doctrines after realizing that human soldiers could march for days without rest. Colonization boards began prioritizing humans for settlement on harsh worlds that had claimed thousands of alien lives. Within 50 cycles, humans had become the backbone of galactic expansion. They went places no one else could go. They survived conditions no one else could survive. They kept moving forward when everyone else had given up. And they did it all with that strange, unsettling smile that had seen on Sarah's face. The smile of a predator that knew it would eventually catch its prey. Some species tried to resist human expansion. The Empire launched 3 separate campaigns to halt Terran colonization of disputed territories. Each campaign ended the same way. The forces would win the initial engagements, their superior firepower devastating human positions. They would celebrate their victories and prepare for surrender negotiations. But the humans never surrendered. They retreated, they regrouped, they found new supply lines and new allies, and they kept coming back, year after year, decade after decade. They eventually realized they were fighting an enemy that would never stop, never give up, never accept defeat as anything more than a temporary setback. The empire collapsed from exhaustion. Their economy crumbled under the strain of perpetual warfare. Their soldiers deserted rather than face another campaign against the relentless Terrans. In the end, they did not lose to human weapons or human tactics. They lost to human stubbornness. Doctor watched the fall of the Empire from his retirement estate on Prime. He thought about Sarah running through that artificial savanna, sweating under a burning sun, never slowing down. He thought about the antelope on ancient Earth, fleeing from predators that refused to stop chasing them. The galaxy had become that antelope. Humanity had become that patient, relentless hunter. And somewhere on a distant world, Sarah finished her morning run and smiled at the sunrise. The galaxy belonged to her species now, claimed one relentless step at a time. Her children would run further than she ever had. Their children would run further still. Humans would keep running, keep expanding, keep pursuing their destiny among the stars until nothing remained but them and the endless void between galaxies. Because that was what humans did. They never stopped.